I said this before, golf is a socialist game. I sound like the harder you work and the better you get, the more you have to give to the undeserving. I'm kidding.
When people like you agree with us, it doesn't help us politically. But for our listeners, I mean, this is an issue that I think that we can find some common ground on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the First Amendment on this is freedom of religion. It doesn't mean freedom from religion.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Golf and Politics. Today it's just Rob and I, and we have a golf sandwich for you. Rob, welcome back to the United States. You've been on quite a journey. Some would say, you might be on pace to exceed where you were last year as far as playing quality golf courses all over the world. But you just got back from a very special trip, and I think we should start this episode. We haven't had a chance to talk. It was the first we're actually talking since you got back. Tell us about your trip to Asia. It was very fast actually, but you got a lot accomplished in a short amount of time.
I did. It was a lot of fun. I went with a group of buddies who are all Golf Magazine panelists, and I'm with Golf Digest, but was not rating. I was just going for fun. And we went to Japan to Tokyo Golf Club. So it was just a whirlwind. We flew from LAX to Tokyo, got there around 5 p.m. It was rush hour in Tokyo, which I've never experienced. And I live in Washington, D.C., which the
Yeah.
traffic the traffic here can be terrible. It does not hold a candle to Tokyo. I think there are like 23 million people who live there. It's the largest city in the world.
Wow.
And our hotel was on the north side of Tokyo. And so it took us like 2 hours to get there. Our host was great. He picked us up in a Mercedes Maybach and, and drove us there. And we get to the lobby of the hotel and we're like, okay, so what time do we need to get down for dinner? And he's like, how's like 30 minutes sound? And we're all just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So I run upstairs, shower, change, get back down to the lobby. And he takes us downtown to this 400-year-old restaurant. And
Wow.
you walk in, you take your shoes off, you go in your socks, and we're exhausted. You go upstairs and like 400 years old, like the ceilings, I'm not kidding you, the ceilings were barely 6 feet high and they had these beams. And so like the whole time we're like banging our heads off these beams. And then when you eat, you sit on the ground and the waitress comes over who's also the chef, and she's got like 4 trays of like raw chicken, beef, uh, fish, veggies, everything, and she boils it right in front of you. And it was delicious. 3-hour meal. So you're
Wow.
sitting there for 3 hours as she like, cooks one thing after another for you. And then we decided to go get a beer, and then somebody wanted to get late night ramen. And then so we go to this ramen place, go back to the hotel, and he's like, great, I'll pick you guys up at 6 a.m. So so you sleep for like 6 seconds, and we were leaving that day after golf. We were only in Japan for 24 hours. So it's like you didn't even have time to unpack. So we go to Tokyo Golf Club, absolutely spectacular course. I would compare it to like Winged Foot in the US, not out on ocean cliffs or, super scenic, but it had like just like those tall Japanese pine trees and cherry blossoms in full bloom. If for anybody that's watching that's been to DC in March or April, they're beautiful. And every course, not every course, but it's a Japanese thing to have 2 greens on every hole. So if you remember playing Pine Valley, number 8 that had 2 greens, we played the upper left green, and then there was a lower right green. Well, all 18 holes at Tokyo Golf Club have two greens, and one's a longer one, one's a shorter one, different bunkers, different complexes. And that was historically because they would use one with a winter grass and one with a summer grass. And then they kept that tradition going. Now they're all grass the same because turf is much better. And use it now mostly for variety options and wear and tear. So, any time of the year, the greens are in perfect shape. And the hosts there are just remarkable. I mean, sometimes you go to a fancy country club in the US and they really make you feel like you should be honored to be here with us. And as soon as you're done, get the hell out. Not in Tokyo. Like, you go there and you have breakfast. We played with the chairman of the club, who used to be an ambassador to the US, I think under Bush Senior, and the club president. They roll out the red carpet. You play golf, you have lunch, and then in all these Asian countries, you do a bath with your group. So you start like you wash off like sitting down with like there's like a spigot and you get this like bucket and you lather up, you just pour a bucket of after bucket of water on yourself, and then you all just get in this hot tub like naked and just have conversation. And it's funny, my buddy who's from Salt Lake City, he'll actually be on our show hopefully next week. Great guy. We were both cracking up that like when you walk around uh an Asian bathhouse, it's the only time in your life you'll feel like a porn star. 'Cause you think you can feel that's inappropriate. That's culturally insensitive, but it was very true and also hilarious. Just adding a little color to the program. And so we did it
You
back.
never add color to the program, so I'm glad you finally got out of your shell, added some
Yeah,
today.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So at any rate, had a great time. And we get in the car and we had like a 2.5 hour drive to the Tokyo airport in rush hour. I mean, we timed this absolutely terribly. And we had to catch a flight we were going to Haiku Island off the southern coast of China. And the only way to get there without needing a visa is to either fly through Seoul or Hong Kong. If you fly through mainland China, you need a visa, which we did not have. And recently, Haiku Island, to boost tourism, it's like equivalent weather to southern Florida. They got rid of the visa requirement. So we fly to Seoul, which was 2 hours, and then we had to switch airlines. So we had to go through customs in Korea, get our bags, shuttle over to a different terminal, recheck in, and fly 4 hours from Seoul to Haiku. We get there at 2:30 a.m., go through customs, have a 2 hour drive to the southern tip of the island. We went to bed at 5 a.m., got up at 7 a.m. to play 36 holes. And there again, it's like breakfast, uh, 18 holes, lunch, 18 holes, and then this like 3 hour elaborate dinner. And it's just wild. Like they had like 12 female caddies waiting for us at the driving range in China, all clapping our arrival. They like hand made us little bag tags. They had probably 1,000 golf balls or more that said "Welcome to Shankin Bay," um, where we like warmed up. And I've never seen service or just a welcome. It was like a hero's welcome, that was unfamiliar, but Shanking Bay was really special. That place is awesome. I'll go into more detail on that. But we were only there for 2 days, and then we flew to South Korea, played Hazley Nine Bridges, stayed the night, flew to Las Vegas, played a few more rounds, and then I got home late last night around midnight because there was a ground stop at Reagan Airport in DC. So I sat on the runway forever before they'd let us take off. But just real.
You casually just, oh yeah, then I just played some golf in the States. I mean, it's not like you were playing some crappy uni courses. I think our listeners should hear where you played once you got back to before you left and after you got back.
Well, on the front end, I went to go visit my buddy Chris Redman and Ryan Stanton, who you've met at MG Cup.
I
And
played Pine Valley with Ryan.
yeah, and so we played San Diego Country Club, where Ryan's a member. We played La Jolla Country Club, which is absolutely beautiful, and we played Rancho Santa Fe Golf Club. And Rancho Santa Fe Golf Club may be one of my new favorite courses in Southern California, which says a lot because it's probably one of my favorite places in the world to play. And it's where Bing Crosby was a member, and that's where the original Bing Crosby clam bake took place until they moved it to Pebble Beach. And we were on the first tee, and the starter was on his mic, and he said, and you could hear somebody from the pro shop say, "Hey, Phil Mickelson and DJ will be playing in like 30 minutes or something like that." So they were not too far behind us, but that's where Phil plays most of his golf.
Right.
And I could see them in the distance. I didn't get to meet them. And otherwise I would have gone and bugged them to come do our podcast, but I didn't get to see them, but other than in the distance. So that was cool. And then on the way back, we I had to speak at a conference in Vegas. And so played Wolf Creek, which is about 90-minute drive from Vegas, and it is a postcard in every direction. It's just like it's open to the public. Um, Highly recommend it for people that do Vegas a lot. I mean, if I'm a big Shadow Creek fan, I love Southern Highlands, um, but it's pretty easy to get to. You just take 15 north from downtown. 90 minutes later, you're there. Great place to spend a day. If you go an additional 30 or 40 minutes into southern Utah, there, there's a place called Sand Hollow Resort, and that place is awesome. So both are open to the public, worth doing. And another cool option, if it's a special occasion and the budget allows for it, you can take a helicopter from Vegas to either place, to and from, for it's probably several $100s a piece if you wanted to do that. I drove; it was totally fine. Um, you could do either one in a day easily and be back to the strip in time. But yeah, so I mean, March closed with a bang. I didn't do much the first 2 weeks of March besides work here in DC, but the second 2 weeks were a real banger. And I have yet to really get out of the uh, um, zone I was in during the year of yes. I've yet to learn how to really say no.
It's still the year of yes, obviously. And
It's still
we'll get into
yeah.
some stuff you have coming up in April, May. And what's so funny is my April and into the beginning of May is shaping up to be the most epic of my entire life. I'm just looking at some starting this weekend. You and I are going to be playing Robert Trent Jones. I'm going to Paynes Valley and Ozark National this month. You're coming out to Oklahoma. Southern. It's unfortunate the Big 12 tournament is going to be at Southern Hills. So we're still trying to work that out. It may still work out. I've got a phone call after we record this podcast to see if there's another way in. But if we don't get there, we'll play Cedar Ridge, the Patriots, some Tulsa Country Club. We can get on some other great courses. Maybe the Alotian is in the works for us. And then later in May and April, I'm going to Arizona. I'm going to be playing Silverleaf and the Omni Tucson, and then back to West Virginia for some meetings. And while I'm in West Virginia, Pete Dye Golf Club and Pikewood. So gonna hit a lot of top 100 courses for me in a span of about 5 weeks. And then
Yeah.
you sent me your list. Jordan, let's put that. Can you put that up on the screen by any chance? I'm looking at and it's like, wow, it's like I'm doing nothing compared to
No,
what you're gonna get done.
no, your April sounds awesome. Pete is terrific course. I was a member there for years. It just was hard for me to get to regularly. I was getting there like once a year, but I love the course. Um, and love a good pepperoni roll um, in West Virginia. So that's a great spot. Pikewood Top 100, also a really good course. I was just at Silverleaf in January, and that is like a tour hangout, like live and PGA Tour. I want to say, I mean, other than Oak Tree National, it's in the running for most tour members, live and PGA. The owner there is probably around our age, maybe in between us, and is a +4 handicap and plays a lot with John Rahm as a member at Silverleaf. But when you go there, their driving range bar might be the best driving range practice facility bar setup hang in the country. Is really, really, really cool. Um, I'm playing this month. This weekend, I've got my buddies Ryan and Devin coming Saturday to RTJ. They're in town for a wedding. Sunday, you and I and Ryan are going to play RTJ again. I think we're going to film some content Monday at the Majority Group Townhouse. Hopefully, do a show or two. And then let's see, the rest of the month, I'm going down to North Carolina and South Carolina. Going to play Pinehurst number 10 and
Oh,
Congaree.
you're gonna love number 10. It is fantastic, and that I don't know if you saw yesterday they put out a April Fool's joke that they were gonna start giving out an X on 10 for anybody that makes a 10 or worse. That was obviously April Fool's, but they did come out with a coin for Pinehurst number 10. If you make an eagle on the 10th hole, which is an incredible par five, you get a coin. So I didn't
I
get the deuce on two when I played, so hopefully you can get the eagle on 10.
You know,
But it's one of my favorite courses I've ever played.
my I'm really pumped to play it. I love number two and I've played number four. This trip we're playing number three and number 10. I think we're gonna play the Country Club in North Carolina Dogwood course, which is the Ellis Maples. I've always wanted to play that. And I think we're doing 2 rounds. Me and Dominic Hersman, also an MG Cup alum. Uh, we're gonna play Congaree and I think either Broom Sedge or Secession. We're still working that out. And then I'll finish the month in Palm Springs. We're gonna play Ladera and the Plantation, which is like totally a bro hangout. Like that's like the hang in Palm Springs, and Sensei Porcupine and Stone Eagle. So, and then I got to get back to DC. I have a huge fly-in um, for two of my biggest clients um, that last week of April, first week of May. So that'll be a zoo. So I'm trying to get in as much. A lot of the prep for that I can do remotely, which is how I can get away with the golf travel. But that whole week, it'll literally be sun up to 10 p.m. every day for 4 days. But it'll be cool. But I'm gonna get a lot of golf in between now and then. And more importantly, I'll probably get at least 4 rounds in with you. So
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, and
yeah.
looking forward to you flying out here. Plus, we have our first ever simulator event at Tour Quality in Tulsa that you'll be in for. We'll be recording content there, and we're going to be playing Quail Hollow on the simulator to celebrate the PGA Championship that will come up in May. And so, if you're in the Tulsa area, we encourage you to join us April 21st, 5 to 8. RSVP by contacting us either on our website or anywhere we're on social media. Just send us something in the comments or a direct message, and we'd love to have you there. There's still a few spots available. But Rob, let's get into the politics portion of our program today.
Mhm.
And this probably will end up being a poorly rated show because people seem to like when you're yelling at me, calling me a Trump jock sniffer, or I'm calling you a liberal hack or whatever. I mean, they like that when we're just going head to head.
Mhm.
But the truth is, today there's an issue that I think that we agree on. We may have some nuances of difference, but there's a very, and I don't think this is being publicized very much or enough. But at the end of April, end of this month, there's going to be a landmark United States Supreme Court decision. And it all started here in Oklahoma. And to kind of set the table a little bit, in Oklahoma, the state charter school board came together and granted charter schools in Oklahoma are taxpayer funded schools. And this was a charter given to the Catholic Church to start a school called St. Isidore. Well, my client is the attorney general of the state. And look, I want to always say this up front. I have clients that are on both sides of this issue. So everything I'm about to say right here is my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for the attorney general. I'm not speaking as my capacity as a spokesman for his gubernatorial campaign. I'm not speaking for any of my clients. This is Matt Parker's personal opinion. But what happened was the charter school board gave them a charter. Gettner Drummond, who's the attorney general here in Oklahoma, took it to the United States Supreme Court and said this was unconstitutional, or not the United States Supreme Court, the Oklahoma Supreme Court. The Oklahoma Supreme Court overwhelmingly ruled in the attorney general's favor and canceled that charter school contract. Well, the charter school appealed, and now it's going before the United States Supreme Court at the end of the month. And I believe, Rob, this is an area that we agree that the Supreme Court should respect the Constitution here and say that the Catholic Church should not be a taxpayer-funded school. I know from a political standpoint, for my clients that are on the side of that, it's not always pleasant because when people like you agree with us, it doesn't help us politically. But for our listeners, I mean, this is an issue that I think that we can find some common ground on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the First Amendment on this is freedom of religion. It doesn't mean freedom from religion. It means freedom of religion. And there's nothing, in my view, in the Constitution or in 230 years of case law that restricts any student or teacher from praying during school hours on their own time. There is, generally my view, and I guess this also, if we want to talk about the Bibles in school,
Hey, there's another issue we agree on. There we go.
yeah,
With two issues. Yeah.
with the Bibles in school issue. Look, I think that faith is a deeply personal thing, whether you're Catholic or Jewish or Hindu or Muslim or nothing at all. But I think that faith is something that should be taught, unless you're going to a parochial school that's privately funded. When it comes to public schools, I would feel more comfortable, and I think the Constitution would side with this, that this is something that you do in church, you do at home with your parents, you do in youth groups, you do separately. I don't like the idea of having taxpayer dollars or mandates having public school teachers um, who aren't trained, have no divinity training, no theological background, um, teaching their interpretation of whatever Bible is put in front of them. I just don't think that that is a constitutional or appropriate use of tax dollars. And I think that a lot of
1,000%.
I think a lot of our debates, and I think that, you know, on an issue where we do disagree, but I think is similar, where I think that we can find common ground at least. Rahm Emanuel was on last week and he said, I'm a big Rahm Emanuel fan. I know you're not. But Rahm was critical of Democrats and Republicans for focusing so much time on the bathroom and sports debates. And he said, if our schools are failing, we need to spend more time focusing on the classroom instead of the bathroom. And we need to focus on are are the students learning to read and write and add and subtract, and are we setting them up on a career to do well in high school, junior college, trades, to be productive citizens and prepare them. And we're spending so much time fighting over whether it's religious funding or whether it's who can participate in sports and what are the bathroom designations. you know, we need to do a reality check and a reset and focus on schooling and on education. So I don't want to diminish any of these issues and debates because I know they're all very important to the groups that are taking them before the courts and before the Congress. But I think there is a politicization of these, and I think, when it comes to Bibles in the classroom and or funding for, let's say, Catholic schools, I don't want to diminish the people bringing these cases because I'm sure there are people who really care about them. But I also think that a lot of them are used to be wedge issues. And on this one, I don't even think it's a wedge issue with Democrats. I think Democrats are probably squarely opposed to it. I think it's a wedge issue in Republican primaries, trying to see who can out conservative one Republican over the other. And probably, I think the Constitution is pretty clear on this. I think even this Supreme Court that's 6-3 conservative, I would not be shocked if they uphold what the Oklahoma court.
Well, a couple things there. Amy Cody Barrett has recused herself from this decision. So she won't be weighing in. And if it ends up being a 4-4 split, then the Oklahoma Supreme Court decision stands. Couple things. Let me go through a few things. I mean, one, on the school issue. If the United States Supreme Court says that the state of Oklahoma can establish a religious taxpayer-funded school, well, maybe people don't have a problem with the Catholic Church, establishing a school. But what about a Sharia law school? What about a Satanist school? Where's the law? Where do we stop this? A fundamentalist Baptist school? Like, I don't know where the line stops. And I'm all for school choice. And that's probably where maybe you and I would disagree a little bit. I support school choice and the ability for families that can't afford to send their kids to a private school, maybe they're in a failing public school, to be able to do that. But there's a difference between giving a family a tax credit to do something that's better for their family and then the state directly funding a religious school. To me, it doesn't its key is protecting the religious freedom. And there's nothing right now, like you said, that stops kids in Oklahoma from exercising their religion and exercising their First Amendment rights. But the Establishment Clause is also out there saying the state is not going to sanction a religious entity. And so that's where I kind of draw the line. And I think that my side, the Republican side, has lost their way a little bit. And then you get into the Bibles in the classroom type of discussion. Right now, it's not illegal in the state of Oklahoma for a teacher to point to the Bible as a historical document and talk about how it was used and thought about by our founders in the history of our country and the history of the world. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like it's not illegal to talk about the Quran and how it's had an impact on world history. The problem I have with our current superintendent, who is a political animal, who wants to run for higher office, who is always trying to get in the news media, he's mandating that every classroom in the state of Oklahoma has a Bible. And like you said, none of these teachers are prepared to teach the Bible. I send my kids to a private Christian school, not because it's a Christian school. I send them to that school because it's very close to where we live. They have high academic standards and they have a really good football program. Or my son wanted to play football. The truth is, I'm not sending them there so that they can go to chapel and be discipled in our Christian faith. I take them to church with me on Sundays, and we have devotional times in our home. Like, it's my job as a parent to disciple and raise my children. I didn't pawn that off on Metro Christian Academy. I sent my kids there because I want them to learn to read and write really well. And it's like, in Oklahoma, we're 49th out of 50 states in educational outcomes. Our third graders cannot read, yet we want to force the Bible into classrooms. Like, hey, let's get back to making sure these kids can do phonics. So if their parents decide to take them to church, they can read the Bible. That's my view of the whole thing.
Right. I mean, you run the risk of, if you're going to have school teachers teaching the Bible in public schools, you run the risk of having Mr. Ellsworth as a teacher, accidentally teaching the kids about feeding and clothing the poor and and helping out the least among us. that we're all God's children and love thy neighbor. And, I might let some of those lessons slip in that could really, confuse them and make them consider voting for Democrats. On the slippery slope argument, like I get what you're saying. I mean, I don't think there are too many charters lining up for Sharia law schools in the
No, no,
US.
no, no, no. There's
But
the right, the far right, right, and
yeah.
is put all these amicus briefs out there, and they highlighting all these great amicus briefs from great conservative minds. They're failing to leave out that the Muslims have also written an amicus brief in favor of this
Yeah.
because they do want to set up a charter school.
Well,
So
it
yeah,
it doesn't mean teaching Sharia law, but I would say this. There's there are some of us, especially those living in DC right now, that would compare our current government to Sharia law in many ways. Look, I think I'll briefly comment on the charter schools because that is an area where we probably disagree. I think in theory it sounds great, but like if you look at the Texas law that they're looking to pass, um, my problem on that front is that I have trouble with taxpayer dollars going to send kids to private schools that don't accept everybody. I mean, the good thing about public schools is that they have to accept everybody. And you'd be taking taxpayer dollars away from these schools that probably need it the most and students that need to benefit from it. And it would be going to help fund, there's no limit on income. So a wealthy family that chooses to send their kid to a private school could take that public school credit and put it towards the private school. Look, if they want to pay for it, by all means, like go for it. But Texas does not put any limit on it whatsoever. And but the school can deny any student that they want. So they're going to get the state funding and then they're able to deny the poor kids that maybe don't have the same letters or are behind on reading or math, and they can deny those kids. So you're going to leave in the public schools the kids that are already kind of behind and then decrease the funding to go to a charter school or a or private parochial school, um, and provide funding to families that don't need the help. So I I struggle with that. I'd be more interested in figuring out how to more efficiently use our tax dollars and get results in our public schools. I know we've tried many times. My former boss helped write, John Boehner helped write No Child Left Behind. There were some successes, some failures. We haven't really been able to crack the nut on it, but I'm a product of public schools. Uh,
me too.
K through 12. My mom still teaches public schools. She's in her 54th year as a public
Incredible.
school teacher. And interestingly enough, I think we're both uniquely qualified to talk about it. Um, my mom was the Bible school and summer camp director at Cove United Presbyterian Church in Weirton every summer and every in and Sunday. And so I never felt like I was deprived of a religious education because I learned those values and lessons at home and I was exposed to them in church and in summer camps. And it's just it's part of my life. And then I went to a Jesuit private university where were required to take um I forget if it was 3 or 4 semesters of theology. And I've taken comparative religion, I've taken all sorts of coursework in it. But I knew when I signed up to go to Georgetown that it was a Jesuit university.
Mhm. Yeah.
And if I went to Ohio State or WVU or Pitt, you can still take those courses, but they're taught by somebody that's either a pastor or a PhD in that, and they're exposing you to all sorts of things that I don't think, and I'm not knocking high school teachers that are right out of college, but like there are high school teachers in their 20s or early 30s that sometimes are asked to teach courses that they may not have a background in. And I think requiring them to teach the Bible, a document that, like the Constitution, very smart people can read the Bible and very smart people can read the Constitution and debate the meaning, debate all sorts of things in it. I mean, if that weren't true, we wouldn't have had crusades. We wouldn't have had religious wars
Sure.
going back centuries. We wouldn't be fighting before the Supreme Court over constitutional questions every week. Our founders were smart enough to realize that. They knew that's why they created the Supreme Court. That's why they created an amendment process. They knew they weren't infallible. They knew that reasonable people would disagree. They knew that times would change. So they put together a process for us in the federal court system. My great 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 grandfather helped author it, the Federal Judiciary Act, Oliver Ellsworth. He was the first chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he was the third or fourth Chief Justice of the United States. And I've read a lot about him, and a lot about the process in setting this up. And the big thing was, they set up the federal court system precisely for these reasons. And the amendment process, um, look, it's inherently very difficult to amend the Constitution. It should be. We've only done it, what, 27 times? If you and 17 if you count the Bill of Rights. Yeah, 27 counting the Bill of Rights. And the reason is like, just a little crash 101 for our viewers of constitutional law. Um, in order to amend our Constitution, which I think it would need to be done to address religion in schools the other way, 2/3 of the US House and Senate have to agree on the amendment and put it forward. And then 3/4 of the states, 3/4 of the states have to ratify it, or 2/3 of state legislatures can propose it, 2/3 of the House and Senate, and 3/4 would need to approve it. So you're talking about a major hurdle when we can barely hit 51 votes in the Senate to keep the government open these days. So the idea of amending the Constitution. So we're going to be operating off of what the text says and what case law is. And I would hope the Supreme Court agrees with the Oklahoma court on this and says that taxpayer dollars shouldn't be going to set up a Catholic charter. And that's nothing against it's nothing against Catholicism. I have a degree from a
Same
Catholic.
here.
I have a
Same.
degree. I have a degree from a Catholic school, Jesuit Catholic school. So,
And at some point, I mean, while we agree on the Supreme Court decision, we definitely have some disagreements on school choice. But I am less passionate about that because I totally see the arguments from the public school crowd that dislikes school choice. And I can understand where they're coming from in certain circumstances. We don't have time to debate that today. I've got to go catch a flight, and we have one more segment to do here. I will say this. I am hoping in my own state of Oklahoma, where I live, that our educational outcomes will get better. We need better leadership. It's unacceptable for us to be 49th. Our kids are not reading at a high level. And if we don't make those changes, it's going to hurt every aspect of our lives here in Oklahoma. Like the future is educating our children and make sure we have a strong school system. You're not going to attract major employers to the state, and businesses aren't going to stay in the state if we don't have a strong school system. So while I think we're doing some things right in education here, there's things that have to be improved. And
well,
I don't
what
think that taxpayer funded religious charter schools is going to benefit the outcomes at the end of the day.
I mean, a debate worth having is on how we fund schools,
I agree.
because the
I
scary
agree.
the scary thing right now in our country, if you look, the state of Texas looks at fifth grade reading scores, and they can almost accurately predict their prison population 10 years out. How scary is that?
I know.
And
That's why it's impressive that your hometown of Steubenville, Ohio, which is not a wealthy school district at all, is leading the state of Ohio in reading scores. That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, because in funding, we're way behind the wealthier school
Yeah.
in Columbus and Cincinnati. So it's not all
But
about
it shows you can't just throw money at the problems. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about there, and I wish I had more
yeah,
time, but I do have to go catch
yeah.
a flight, and I want to talk about our last segment. It's kind of on the educational spectrum. We are starting a new segment in Golf and Politics called the Parker Improvement Project. And
This
Jordan,
one's
why
gonna
don't you go
take
ahead?
time.
Jordan, go ahead and roll the clip. Roll the clip.
Well, when it comes to Matt's golf game,
Mhm.
I have decided, I think this is going to be the year of Matt. I think Matt's going to really get it together this year and start going low. And I have also decided that my general posture toward his golf game is going to be positive and supportive because I'm going to give him shit every day. It's Donald Trump. That I've got to be nice to him
Yeah.
because I'm going to pin everything this president does wrong squarely on Matt Parker's shoulders. So I'm going to be supportive. Yeah. There it is. There it is. I'm going to be very supportive of him on the golf course.
That's
Appreciate
good.
that. I appreciate that. All right. Well, Rob, I appreciate you being support. I need some support, obviously. I am starting this process as a shaky 4 handicap. I clearly have the potential to shoot some really good scores, but there's some problems in my golf game that need to get fixed. And I appreciate, last year's your year of yes, and obviously this is still another year of yes for you. But I appreciate you adding to your plate another project of helping me improve my golf game. And I want to say first and foremost, like the number one thing that I want to improve is my attitude. I get way too angry. When I talk about my Christian faith, there's nothing that tells me I need Jesus more than playing golf because all this bitterness and anger can get riled up inside of me. And like if I stay a 4 handicap forever, I'm cool with that as long as I can go out and play golf and have a good time. And part of the issue is oftentimes, and you've played with me occasionally when this has happened. I don't feel like I'm actually playing golf when I get squirrely and sideways, especially off the tee. If you're hitting it into the junk all day long, like golf is really exciting when you have 2 or 3 like really tough recovery shots that you have to either punch back out in the fairway or you have to find a creative way to get the ball close to the green and get up and down the par. That's exciting. But when hole after hole after hole, you're looking for your golf ball, you're in the junk all day long, you're hitting it out of bounds, you're losing golf balls. There's nothing fun about that. That's not playing golf. So I just want to get to the place where I can lock in. And we can go through a lot of statistics, Rob, but number one, I am averaging. This should sum up what the problem is. I am averaging 3 double bogeys or worse per round. I may, if you look at it, I probably make as many, if not more, birdies than you do. But when you make 3 double bogeys around, it's impossible to turn in a good score, especially when one of those double bogeys wasn't a double bogey, it was actually an 8 or a 9 or a 10 even. So, man, that's the number one. Like we can talk about swing changes or swing tips or whatever, but I've got to stop making the big numbers. And so, let this weekend when we start playing, I'm looking forward to getting some mentorship from you on how to stop making some of these big numbers because that's something you don't do. And so it impresses me when we play. I mean, it's down the middle of the fairway, it's up by the green. If you miss the green, you get the hands of an angel, if you will. You putt well, you keep a level head. I see you get a little angry if you miss some putts, but for the most part,
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with the golf game.
Everyone gets angry. The key is, having that reaction line just in front of the ball. So you hit your shot, it doesn't work out. You can say, fuck, but as soon as you walk past that line and start going toward the green, you got to be thinking about the next shot. And a lot of times, and this is one thing I used to do, um, that I had to get past was, having a bad hole or a bad shot and thinking, oh, well, today's shot, right? And I can think of so many rounds where you add them up at the end and it's an 80 and you're like, or an 82, and you're like, well, shit, I threw away at least 7 or 8 shots there. They all add up. And I think part of it is like the old Tiger Woods comment, which is swing aggressively at conservative targets. And so one thing I do not do is if I hit it in the rough, I'm not going at the pin unless it's in the like
Mm.
the center of the green. So like
Right.
what takes double and triple out of the equation? And I think that's part of what to work on. And I guess keeping track of fairways, greens, and putts every round and keeping track of those doubles. So like if we find a trend line, are the doubles because we blew one out of bounds off the tee? Or are the doubles because we laid the sod over a wedge or chili dipped one? Or are the doubles because of three putts? Then let's say it's three putts. What's causing the three putts? The biggest cause of three putts are mishits. Leaving a putt 8 feet short,
Right.
blowing it by 6 feet, and having to make that tough putt coming back when you're pissed at yourself for knocking it by. So the biggest thing is like let's understand what is the trend of those three doubles, and is there an attitude trend with those three doubles? Does the double occur because we hit a bad tee shot and we're pissed off and we don't focus on the second shot? Are we trying to bite off more than we can chew? And there's not a shot you can't hit, but every shot's a percentage shot. So I may be able to pull off, you know, the shot to the back right pin every now and then, but not routinely and not out of the rough.
Yeah.
So
No. And that's what we're gonna solve. I mean, when I was in Texas with Casey last week, actually won our match on the 81st hole. I knocked a 9-iron to 3 feet. Actually got a nice break, ball kicked off a tree back in the middle of the fairway at 9-iron to 3 feet, win the cup. It's fantastic. But for those 4 rounds in Texas, I had some blow up holes. I made a couple eights, but I shot in the 70s every round. I didn't actually make a lot of birdies, but I was just keeping it in play, and my misses were acceptable misses. And I was dialed in mentally. I felt the shot, I saw the shots, I was focused, and hitting pretty solid shots. What I can get into at times, though, is Lucas Glover, if you remember, he went through the putting yips. I don't have the putting yips, but I get the tee shot yips, where literally my body will make a swing that is inexplainable. I'll just like lunge at the ball and hit it completely off the planet, and this nervousness will come over me on the tee. It didn't happen in Texas. It turned around and happened at my home club last Sunday. I couldn't get a ball in play. I shot 80, 87 in my home club. Like inexcusable type of stuff. So that's really not my number one focus, because when you look at my stats, it's tee shots out of bounds that's causing big numbers, or just where I will make a series of mistakes on a couple holes because mentally I'm not locked in. And I've got to, I had a long talk with my coach, Philip Walker, about this on Saturdays. We went through a slight swing change. One technical thing I need to work on is I hit cuts. So my swing path is left always. I need to be sure that I never miss one dead left. You can't swing left and have a close club face and hit it off the plane. Because if I'm aiming at the left side of the fairway and I close the club face and hit it left, like that's problematic. So we're working on getting the club face open to the path on a consistent basis so that I hit cuts more into the middle of the fairway. That being said, screw the technical side of things. If I go up to the tee box overcome by fear and not knowing how to swing the club because I have the yips, that's a real problem. So mentally I've got to get myself where I need to be. And I can develop that on a simulator or on the driving range just as much as I can the golf course. And that's the number one thing I've got to overcome, because when that shows up, it's just awful.
you can focus on, your path in the club face. Everybody should do that. But I would also add the importance of picking out a target and looking at the right spot, picking on a target, because our brain um sort of directs what we're doing toward having a productive target. And knowing your ball flight and predicting it is important to picking out that target. The other thing is there's nothing more important in golf than commitment.
Yeah.
I don't mean commitment in practice. I mean commitment to what you're doing right now.
To that shot in that
Like
moment. Yeah.
like
No question.
like I think of Lee Trevino when I think of that, because Lee Trevino will spend the 3 minutes leading up to that shot bullshitting and yapping and telling jokes. But the 11 seconds he's committed to being over the ball and hitting that shot, he's just as lasered in as Tiger Woods. Well, you know,
Yeah.
so I would rather see somebody do something a little bit wrong. Maybe the path is a little bit off or the club face is a little bit off, but just commit to it than I would have somebody be technically perfect like Adam Scott and
Yeah.
second guess himself. So by the time the
That's yeah. No, quite, Rob. I'm telling you, like, God's honest truth. When I'm playing and I am mentally focused and committed and I hit a bad shot, it doesn't bother me even a little bit because I know I'm gonna hit bad shots. Where it bothers me is when I'm standing on the tee box and I cannot bring myself to focus and commit. And of course, I'm gonna hit a bad shot because then you're trying to guide it and you're just holding on for dear life. To me, like, that's got to be my number one focus. If I can just commit, if I can just get dialed in and focused in a little bit of confidence that the ball is going to go relatively somewhere where I'm aimed, like, golf becomes a lot more fun because bad shots shouldn't bother you if you're playing golf because you can recover from a bad shot. It's where you can't recover from is a mental beating where you're afraid to hit the golf ball. And so that's my number. Like right now, that's the number one building block that I'm focused on. Even when I'm practicing the simulator, like I want to look at every swing as, am I committing to this shot? And I found myself yesterday, I was at the simulator for an hour and I found myself just mindlessly hitting balls. And I'm like, this is stupid. I need to,
well,
but I'd rather hit 1/3 the amount of swings for the day, but be mentally dialed in and committed. Even hitting that ball on the screen, I'm committed to hitting it the way that I want to hit it.
so I Mike McGettrick jokes that I'm the best player he coaches who never practices. Um, but I do practice, not a ton. It's just I don't get worked up over the modern fascination with TrackMan, or Flight Scope. When I go to the range, my first couple cuts is getting loose, and then I I don't even look at the monitor. I don't care what the monitor says because I can see what I'm doing based on how the ball flies. Where it's starting, where it's finishing, how high, medium, or low it is. I know what I'm doing in my swing to cause that. I don't need to see it on the monitor to know that
Yeah.
I'm 2.4 right or 2.4 left or this speed or that speed. I can see if it's going high, medium, or low and what I'm doing. The other thing is there are always certain shots on any course that you've played before that intimidate you. There are certain shots at RTJ that intimidate me, and I've played it 1,000 times. Um, I visualize those shots before I play, and I hit them. So one of the shots that gives me hell is the first tee shot at RTJ. So when I take my driver out on the practice tee, I'm visualizing the shot I want to hit. Do I want to draw it off the left edge of the bunker or start it up the left side and hit a little cut off the bank? And I pick which one on the practice tee. And I hit
Yeah.
10 and I hit 10 of them. And then there are the second shot on 3. It's a long par 4 over a bunker. And at that point I'll look at the tee sheet and I'll know where the pin is. And I know that if I hit a good drive, I have a 7-iron in. If I hit a shitty drive, I have a 5-iron in. And so I hit 5 of those 7-irons and 5 of those 5-irons. So that when I get out there, no matter what happens off the tee, I've already hit it 5 times today.
Yeah.
And
Smart. Smart.
it's not gonna shock me. And so going through the round, when I go to the short game area, And I think about the shots that give me trouble around the green. Like there's a little flippy wedge on 8 over the bunker that you got to stop quick. There's some long runners on 13. I hit 3 or 4 of them so that when I get out there, it doesn't surprise me. I've already tried it. I've already clipped it. I've already missed one and I've already clipped a couple of them perfectly. So that when I get out there, it doesn't surprise me. So I don't worry about uh club head speed because frankly it wouldn't be impressive. I don't even know what my club head speed is. I really don't. Like it's probably right around 100. I have no idea. I honestly do not freaking know. When I take lessons, I tell them I don't even want to look at it. I don't give a shit. I can tell how I'm hitting it based on what the ball does. Now, there are going to be teachers and pros that push back on that and say data is great. Look at the data, you'll learn more. But I think that makes people more obsessed on data when they're on a flat lie with perfect conditions, when like that doesn't exist out on the course. Like sometimes you need to chuck down an inch on your driver, tee it a little lower, and hit your fairway finder. And sometimes you're feeling good, tee it up and let it fly. But whether you're hitting a fairway finder or letting it fly, there is nothing more important than picking out a target and committing to it and believing in it. Because it's only 11 seconds from the time you set up to the ball, do a little waggle and let it rip. And then you move on and you go to the next one. But hitting aggressively to conservative targets, picking your target, committing, and taking double out of play. Like I really do. We talked about this on one of our shows after the Ireland trip. Like I could tell when our match was close. Like you were kind of expecting for the blow up at some point. Like you were waiting on. You were like waiting. No, I don't mean that. I don't.
I know, and that's why I'm so proud of what I did in Texas, going toe to toe with Casey. Shot 33 on that final 9. I shot 38, and actually, I think we tied for the overall score that day, but because he had a bad front 9. But the bottom line is, like when it counted, I was in the game. I was making great shots.
Well,
And that over the last couple of years, that hasn't been the case for me. I've melted like butter in the hot sun. So no, this is going to be a great segment because, for instance, Friday I've got a lesson. George's going to come and film it, and we'll have clips that we can have these special segments where you can break down what I'm doing, good, bad, and ugly. Give me some encouragement. Give me an ass kicking when I need one. And
well,
we're chasing Rob. We're chasing Rob.
I'm for this because I don't want to be giving you a lot of strokes in the Ryder Cup.
I don't even want the strokes. That's the thing. I don't want strokes. I want to just go play, and
I said this before, golf is a socialist game. I sound like the harder you work and the better you get, the more you have to give to the undeserving. I'm kidding.
We'll get into this in further episodes because I got a lot of little goals that I want to accomplish, and we can talk through some of those. But in the meantime, I got to go catch a flight to Austin, Texas. Rob, I always appreciate it. What a great trip to Asia. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you to everybody that tunes in, watches us on YouTube. Please subscribe. And if you listen to podcasts, we're every platform where you get audio podcasts. Please subscribe, download these episodes. We appreciate it. The show is growing each and every week. And we want to thank Casey Lang at Lang Financial for being a sponsor of the show. And there's more to come from that in the coming weeks and months. So again, thanks to everybody. Rob, have an awesome day. I look forward to seeing you this weekend in Washington, D.C.
Sounds good, brother. See ya.